Recording, and let's get going here. I introduced you to Mindy Godfrey, who's whatever your title is. We're flexible and fluid on titles. You're kind of our director of client service, front end sales guru, and five or six other things. National events coordinator. I don't I don't know what else, whatever you want to call it. And I am Stephen Oliver, and founder CEO of Advisor Wealth Mastery, and that's advisorwealthmastery.com. But this week for our podcast here, and we're also going to be on YouTube and on Facebook and every other damn place. But hey, let's talk about this. You and I were talking earlier, Mindy, about some quotes I had pulled up from Ken Fisher. In fact, he's got a number of books. I forget which one that was. It'll come to me in a second where this quote was from. But basically, what he was saying was every time he did some new level of direct response marketing for his financial advisor business, everybody thought he was crazy, and it worked. And the story I like is one he told in a small group meeting that we were having with Dan Kennedy, and he told the story of early on he was having really good response with his direct response marketing. He was afraid the big companies were going to knock him off, and so he was running around looking for capital, looking to sell an interest in the company so he'd be able to scale more quickly before they knocked him off. And then as he was looking for capital, he realized that all of them had already discounted what he was doing, decided it didn't work, and he not only didn't have to worry about being knocked off, but they had discounted it. It's interesting to me just how backwards, clueless, and broke, again, I guess is the right way to say that, the industry is from a standpoint of marketing approach. What would you add to that from our ongoing research projects and success and failures here with this?
Yeah, I think you're really right as far as the broken. There's definitely a misunderstanding of the potential, I think. There's like, oh, if I'm getting one or two new clients a month, well, then that's fantastic, and that's really great growth. And I still have not quite figured out if they don't believe or don't understand, if what's possible when getting new financial advising clients, because that small mindset of just one or two new clients a month just still kind of boggles me, as to far as how or why to think that way. That's certainly not the potential that's there for advisors. There's so much more,
Yeah.
bringing in 10 new clients a month or 20 new clients a month, and really getting good leads. There's just so much untapped potential there. And it doesn't seem like there's even sometimes a desire to tap into that potential. And I don't know if because it's just that belief of, oh no, that's not really a thing, or that's too much. I just haven't figured that piece out yet.
Well, I think I have. I've been pondering this over the weekend, and that one Ken Fisher quote, which was a blinding flash of the obvious, I guess, to me. But he said, "I started a practice, then I turned it into a business. The practice mindset makes you a slave. You're dependent upon your own labor and perhaps a few employees. My practice revenue is down, so I decided now I'll hire some people to sell. I'll learn to delegate. I learned that a successful founder CEO is a quitter or a delegator." And I was thinking about this. We were talking about this over the weekend, I think, or late last week. Is when I started my business here in Denver, is I never thought about it the way that I think most advisors, whether they start in the life side or they start in the wealth management side or have somehow mixed the two. But I think almost everybody in this industry thinks of themselves first and foremost as a salesperson who then has to do the technical work. And when I started, I did five retail locations in 18 months, the sixth retail location on the 30th month. So six locations in 30 months and grew to 2,500 clients in that period of time. And from day one, my sense was each of those locations needs a salesperson, and it needs a person who's doing the fulfillment. In this case, they were martial arts schools, so you have an instructor and you have what we call the program director. And my role was to do all of the marketing and drive the leads to the place. And then as we went on over the years, I could teach these program directors things that they could do on a local level, on a community outreach basis. But mostly, truth be told, they answered the phone, they set an appointment, they did a discovery meeting, they did did the sales process, enrolled a new client, and then they facilitated to make sure that client retention was good while somebody else handled the technical aspects, right, of the service. And it never once dawned on me that my limitation was I had to make every one of these sales face to face, belly to belly. Now, I did a bunch of them. I tell people over the years, and I ran that business for 35 years, is what I did on that business is I did the startups. So I would go fill the place up, and my formula was 100 clients in the first month, 200 clients in the first 90 days, and that was now a very profitable unit, and I would then move off to the next one. And then I would, the second thing I would do was turnaround. So when one of them was down, or when the organization was down, I put myself into one of these things. And, I came across, and I stole this basically from Gary Halbert, I came across the conclusion that, there's no problem that wouldn't be solved by adding 100 new clients, right? In Halbert's case, he called it Operation Money Suck. When you can't pay the bills and everything's going wrong, lock yourself in the office and figure out, how to bring revenue in rather than dealing with all the problems. But to me, that's a missing ingredient, I think, in the mindset with these guys is they think, one, instead of being in charge of marketing, that really they're the salesperson, technical person who's going to do this stuff, all rolled together, who then, they're not relying on, other than Fisher, they're not relying on the company to drive them traffic, right? And mostly it's onesie twosies, either one of three systems that I've seen, all of which sort of work. But one system is for every client, I just kind of beg them for referrals, right? And I can have all kinds of language built in and stuff. But I'm asking for referrals, and they're pushing me on to somebody else, and then they end up with that silly formula 10-3-1, which we can talk about. But the second element is, what's depicted with all the stockbrokers in the movies, right, is the just pick up the phone, make 100 cold calls a day, 200 cold calls a day, 300 cold calls a day. And now that do not call has gotten in the way, and frankly, cell phones have gotten in the way because people don't pick up their cell phone for a unrecognized number, is a lot of the companies, Merrill had a big brouhaha about one, stupidity of the whole equity thing. We can talk about that too. But the other piece of it is they were getting in trouble on do not call. So now what they're doing is cold contacting on LinkedIn, and then going to that same ratio of how many cold contacts do I have to make on LinkedIn, how many of them are going to end up expressing some interest, and then they're thinking it's 10-3-1 once I get to that point. But that's number two, and then number three is the more enlightened are doing dinner meetings, right, and then are pissed off about plate liquors and all that kind of stuff. But what we know it works. The biggest gap to that thing working is making sure the people that you invite are truly qualified prospects. Because nothing worse than feeding a bunch of people a $50 a plate dinner that have no capability of utilizing your services. But it seems like they get bogged down into, here are my only three choices. Beg my warm list, my friends and family. And then when I get some clients, to beg them for referrals. And, referrals work. It's not that it doesn't. And then it's cold call, repetitious cold calls, and or it's those dinner meetings. But they miss the point that there's this whole broad parthenon of things that they can do with a range of direct mail, not necessarily, just for dinner meetings, because that's where I see most of this. There's direct mail, there's Facebook advertising, there's LinkedIn advertising, there's TV, radio. A good friend of mine with a massive practice now has in Chicago has a radio show. He buys time every weekend. He's got an ongoing radio show that drives traffic. But you can do a radio show, you can buy spots, you can do targeted direct mail. You could do community outreach activities, and in this case, it'd be working with companies and so forth. But it seems they miss all of that stuff, and they get these blinders on what it is they can do. And I know I'm ranting a little bit, but what would you add to that, Mindy?
No, I completely agree. I think a lot of people do just miss that there are multiple things. They get locked into, well, this is what we know how to do.
Yeah.
Or they get locked into, well, this is, the way we've always done it, which is like the worst thing
Yeah.
ever. Just because you've always done it, that mean way, do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And you don't always get new that way. And so I think that, breaking out of those mindsets and that limitation is going to be really key for people to move from that idea of I'm just running this little practice to I'm operating a truly successful and growing business, and really making that shift.
Yeah,
That's going to
yeah,
be a big piece of it.
absolutely. And let's go back to the Merrill article because I just want to rant on that for a second. Is the first thing about what's been the historic training program is that it's just kind of like the training the SEAL team, right? Is if you put somebody on do 100, 200, 300 cold calls a day, and you're going to get a certain closing rate and a certain number of clients, and to now earn your seat, you have to create a certain level of clients. Is you're absolutely going to weed out the weak and the ones who aren't willing to work really hard. So, frankly, from that standpoint, it was always a valuable process in pretty much everything I did hiring on a new people. We had our own versions of that kind of, if you want, hazing rituals or trial by fire where you can weed them out. The logic though of women aren't doing as well, or certain minority groups aren't doing as well on that, really kind of misses the point of define what the personality trait and define what the work ethic has to be for the role, and then find people who are going to fit that. And then on an ongoing basis, when you're building the business, you're much better off if you can create a marketing toolbox, if you will, of things that they can do that are labor, but not not a lot of money out of pocket, and things that they could do on advertising. And if you were a big company like Merrill or now Bank of America, or if you're a big company like Schwab, you're a big company like Northwestern Mutual, you should be able to put people in place that are going to drive traffic for all the way down to the front line and do it in an effective manner. And the reason that those companies don't do that boggles my mind. All you have to do is look around and you can see plenty of examples of direct response marketing that works just fine. But the Merrill thing is, to me, it's the dumbest idea in the world. If you're adapting your training process in order to coddle people who are failing otherwise in the system. The flip side of that is we know this is an industry, like I pay a lot of attention with Northwestern Mutual, and they have this great college recruiting program, one thing or another, all these fresh young minds who are enthusiastic about coming in, and the failure rate once they hit the ground is horrendous. I don't know the inside numbers, but I mean, it's horrendous. Very, very few make it through the first year, make it further through the first 2 years. And by the way, the ones that do make it through the first year and 2 years tend to be the ones that were in the sorority or the fraternity. They have a big group of people that they can draw on. They go start working their warm list because they're not giving them lead traffic. They're not providing them functional marketing systems that work. They're not giving them anything that's functional. So the flip side of that article and that storyline from Merrill is, why the hell can't the bigger companies come up with effective direct response marketing systems that are going to directly feed their frontline people qualified and quality prospects? Well, we know they can, they just choose not to, right? And my sense of it is it's myopic. It's, they have blinders on, they don't see it. The big companies look around at what everybody else is doing, and they think that Ken Fisher's a whack job or something, so they ignore him and they look at what everybody else is doing and say, well, we're no worse than anybody else, and leave it at that. I guess. How would you interpret that, Mindy?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're just stuck, for lack of a better word. They don't do the jumping into the new, and it seems like like you were saying with this program at Merrill, it doesn't make any sense, and there definitely is not uh, any concept really beyond Fisher of direct response marketing for the most part. It's all branding focused, or it's all name recognition. I just need to get my name out there. I can't even tell you how many people I've talked to who are like, oh yeah, I'm getting my name out there. Okay, well, and I'm sorry, that helps you how? You know, name recognition certainly matters, but it doesn't get you a client. And it's definitely, speaking from somebody who's on the front end, it's way more fun to talk to somebody, and way easier to move the person, the prospect in the sales funnel, when you talk to somebody who has raised their hand. Oh yeah, we'd like that book. Yes, we'd like that report. Yeah, I'd like to know more, because you're talking then to somebody who's engaged and wants to be engaged with you. And that's just such a lost concept in this whole industry so much of the time.
Yeah, yeah. The let's bring it down to, for pretty much everybody who's listening to this, isn't they're not going to be in the marketing, the chief marketing officer at Schwab in all likelihood. They're going to be in their RIA, trying to figure out how to get some more client flow. So let's bring this down to them. And by the way, if the chief marketing officer at any of those big companies are listening, oh my God, you got a lot of work to do, guys. But I doubt you will, because you're not being held accountable for new client growth. You're getting rewarded on winning awards and pretty pictures and so forth. So, but let's go back down. If I were to parachute into an independent RIA right now, and let's say they have 5 employees total, and was going to do my routine for many years of how do we add 100 clients to this place, right? Is you start with, and one question, of course, has to be, is what's my budget, right? So, we can walk through it, but if I had a unlimited budget, is I behave differently than, let's say, I have zero budget. So let's start that we're on the close to a zero budget realm, and what do I do first, right? Well, we can start with online marketing. We should definitely be buying pay-per-click, be on the front end of that. We should have a website that where we're optimizing on an ongoing basis, which, by the way, it's sort of black magic, and it's certainly a long-term project. So, I'm not going to say in 90 days I'm going to drive 100 clients. That's not going to be factored into it at all, right? But I'm certainly going to make sure that I have a quality website, that we're optimizing it for search, and we're making sure that it converts. I can start buying pay-per-click. Hell, in 10 minutes I could be up and running, buying pay-per-click, driving that to a focused landing page, responding to those leads immediately. So that can generate lead traffic today. I can also be up on Facebook and generating lead traffic today. And if I wanted to, again, depend upon how much staffing I have, I could either outsource, or I could put somebody on doing that cold contacting on LinkedIn crap. I mean, it's not that it doesn't work. It does work. Frankly, I'd be just as likely to have one of my staff members just take a right out the front door and start knocking on doors in the gated community on the golf course, right? Because it's the same mechanism. And by the way, when somebody opens the door, it's a lot harder to ignore you than when you in-message them on LinkedIn. And by the way, I've had staff do that in the past as well, and very rarely, because it's like way on the bottom of my list of what we would do. But I would start with that. I would get pay-per-click advertising, I'd get Facebook advertising going, I'd make sure my website is set up. But then what I would do I would put some thought into it, and I'd say, how can I go get in front of 300, 500, 50, some group of highly qualified people? And how can I get in front of a big group of people rather than messing around with onesie twosies, right? So where And again, you got to figure out who you're targeting. But if I genericize and say, the average advisor is targeting 50 to 60 year olds with half a million and up, in assets, or 2 million and up in assets, whatever you want to target. Where do those people congregate, right? Where could I go get in front of a big group of them? I mean, is there a resort community that's marketing to retirees, marketing to pre-retirees? Can I get in front of those people? Could I do a meeting to all of the people who live on their resort? Could I do a remote meeting, a Zoom meeting, or a webinar to everybody that they're prospecting? That might be one place that I can get together. Are there service organizations in my immediate area where I could get in front of them and I can be a feature speaker and one thing or another? Are there publications in my immediate area where I could become a columnist and I could buy advertising? I could become a columnist. I could have content published on their website. I could have content published in their newsletter. And then I might, if I didn't want to travel, I might look at, what conventions are coming up at our convention center. What events and meetings are coming up at our big convention hotels and facilities. Around here, we have the God, what's it called? There in Opryland as well.
Oh, the Gaylord Resort.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Gaylord has hundreds of thousands of square feet of meeting space. What's coming up at the Gaylord? What's coming up at the convention center? What's coming up at all of those things? I mean, hell, if I'm an event promoter, in most cases, I'm kind of desperately looking for speakers to fill the slots. And if I have the National Association of Neurosurgeons, the National Association of let's say the Bar Association is having a big event. We had one of our events in Boston one time. Same time the Bar Association was having their convention. There wasn't a hotel room available in the place. So you start with what groups are coming to you where I could be a speaker at those events. Perhaps I could, have a booth at those events, but really I'd like to be a speaker at those events. What groups are already in my area where I could be a speaker for those groups? What companies would want an expert to come in and facilitate helping people with their retirement plan, with their benefits packages, and so forth. And so, you can go to the business list, and I can say, who are my top employers? Who are the top 10 employers, top 20 employers, top 30 employers? Where can I make inroads? Do I already know somebody who's a C-suite executive? And that's when you go through your warm list, sometimes that's the best starting point is, who do I know that's already the director of human resources at a big company? Who do I know who's already a C-suite executive? Who in my client base do I know that fit those categories? And as well as I do, most of the advisors, they kind of sort of barely know what their clients do, but they don't have much depth, right? You might find the person who's the state chair for Kiwanis and happens to be the human resource director for the number 2 employer in your state. And you can go through the list, right? Over the years, I've used the example, but I had the human resources director for U.S. West back when it was the number 1 employer in our state. I had the marketing director for the Denver Broncos. I had I think I'm flipping that. I had the chief financial officer for the Denver Broncos. I had the marketing director for the Denver Nuggets. I had the CEO of, I think it was Norwest Banks at the time. I had the 3-state director for McDonald's. I had the 2-state director for Paul Mitchell Products. The 2-state director for Patron. You can go on and on and on. But all of those people have networks, and they have a group of employees that are working with them that are good prospects. That's where I would start. Is I always go to, how can I get in front of 200 of my best prospects? How can I get in front of 500? And how can I get in front of them in such a way that they're putting me on the pedestal, right? So I'm coming in. If I was speaking to a convention of surgeons of some sort, or pediatricians, or a convention of dentists, well, hell, I could, some of those things have 5,000 people who show up at them, even if I was in a breakout session, not in front of the entire group. Well, that's great. I've still got 75 people showing up that are going to be great prospects for me. So to me, that's where I always start. Is I start with where are the organizations. So where are the organizations, the groups, the meetings, the conventions, the different organizations that'll put me on a pedestal and let me be a speaker in front of their group, or will make me a columnist, or will share an offer that I create. Maybe it's just, and by the way, I've seen some advisors do a really great job of this. Is create a basic book on retirement planning, but then it becomes, pick a company. It becomes the navigating your way through the IBM retirement maze, a pilot's guide to retirement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can create a book, then personalize it based upon the individual employers in the area, and then you can go through the HR or the C-suite executives. You can probably have them gift that to their employees. You can become a speaker. You could do sessions in their conference rooms for their C-suite executives and their management ranks. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do with that. But see, to me, that's the way I go scoop up, 100 new clients. Is I find 5 or 6 different places where I can get in front of 500 good prospects at once, and then the leverage is just unbelievable that way.
Absolutely.
What would you add to that, Mindy?
Well, one of the things I would touch on is, I come out of corporate America and doing large scale events, in particular conventions. And, a lot of people will turn up their nose at being a breakout session leader. Well, let me tell you, when you're the breakout session leader, the people who walk into your breakout session are there because they want to be there. Again, it goes back to these are people who are raising their hand, they're interested. And so definitely taking advantage of those kinds of opportunities is such a great thing, because you get in front of not only a lot of people, but you're getting in front of people who are truly interested when you are able to take advantage of those kinds of things. The other thing I would add on that is, becoming a resource to your client who is a chief financial officer, who's some sort of C-suite and has people that they report to, or have people who report to them, those kinds of connections. It really is a helpful thing for a lot of folks who do need to bring people in who are experts on different levels for their country, for their companies and their employees. And so it really becomes a benefit and a service, an added benefit and service that you as an advisor can offer some of your clients who are in those positions. I mean, it really is something that becomes a helpful resource for a lot of folks, because everybody cares about their money. And most people have little to no education on what to do with it. And so for someone to be able to offer you as a knowledgeable and respected and qualified resource to help others, it looks good for them too.
Yeah, especially in a either an industry niche or niched into a specific company. Yeah, let's go back to the breakout thing though. I'm not sure you've heard this story. I was a breakout speaker at a convention, not huge convention, but I knew that there's 4 different things or 6 different things going on at the same time. And most of it was technical, wasn't business training, marketing. And, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's the National Association of Hypnotists, or it's the National Association of Neurosurgeons, or it's the National Association. They're always going to be more focused on the technical elements of their thing, rather than money, how to bring in more clients, or how to keep hold of their money better. Strangely enough, it's just the human nature. So I knew I had an uphill battle, and this was at I believe this was at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. Here's the list of stuff I did to fill the room. Number 1, I made a deal with the person promoting the event, and I put priority mail envelopes together with a promotional packet about the presentation I was going to give them, shipped it to their offices where they labeled them, so it had postage prepaid, everything else. They weren't willing to give me their list, but they were willing to mail my stuff to their guys if I paid the postage and shipped it to them. And I've done the same thing with mail houses, by the way, where they'll send the list with an agreement that it's confidential, and I'll send the content, and the mail house fulfills third party so that they don't feel like they're giving me their list. In this case, I mailed it all to their office. They put labels off and mailed it, and this went out probably hit 3 weeks before the actual event, and it was to people who were registered for the event, right? So now 3 weeks before the event, and I guarantee nobody else did this. So now everybody at the convention is getting a priority mail packet from me about the session that we're going to be doing. Then at the MGM Grand, I lined up to be running an infomercial on the in-house television channel that was running 24/7 on the MGM Grand internal system. So on channel whatever it was, on channel 83, as people were flipping through, as one of the dead channels. So now there's an infomercial about me, and actually it was a live session that was playing with calls to action, a drive to the meeting room that was playing the entire time of the event. In fact, the promoter of the event was agitated that their guys hadn't had the idea to do the same thing themselves. Then they agreed to put my information in the registration packet as a separate package about the event that I was doing in the registration packet. Then I hired some teenagers with bells, with flyers, who worked the hallways, driving people into the event on the break between the events, and for the early in the morning, made sure the promotional materials about my events was in everybody's hand in the hallway, and of course the bells were. It's starting now, ushered them to the event. And I could go on and on, but you get the idea. Is most people are, they're going to be in the room over there, and they expect that people are going to look at the brochure and they're going to seek them out, and they're going to have a full house. And I know in this particular event, there was another speaker on essentially the same topic, booked side by side with me. He had two people. I had 90 people, standing room only. You couldn't fit everybody into the room, right? I left with 750 leads. So, free offer, fill this out for me, a stack of leads like this, right?
Right.
You're right. I mean, from the standpoint of, is that an opportunity? Is that not an opportunity? Well, it depends. I mean, one, it's a great opportunity just to be there and have access to those people. And of course, a lot of times what we'll also do is we'll do a booth. We'll do a booth in the trade center, do a booth in the hallways. We'll have it set up in such a way as to lead and drive lead traffic as well. It would depend upon the quality of the venue. In other words, the quality of the people and how much. I have a deal I was talking about doing a speaking gig at here. Well, in April, I'm not going to do it, but they were offering, here's 3 days, you can have a booth the entire time, and we'll promote it, and then you'll be a featured speaker. But I didn't want to have the booth. I didn't want to pay for the thing. It wasn't an audience that was big enough or interesting enough for me to do any of that. But the number of different things you can do depend upon the quality of the audience. And by the way, most of this stuff that I have done over the years was never that I paid them to do it. Sometimes there's a minor amount that I paid them. Sometimes it's they're paying you to be a speaker to go in and generate prospect traffic. That's the best, right?
Right.
And sometimes it's you're giving them a split of some sort. And by the way, you can do that in our industry. It's just you're selling a package, a book, a program, and giving them a split rather than giving them a split on the back end actual planning revenue. Or if you can get away with that from a standpoint of your company and so forth, you can do that as well. You can give them a spiff on the upside of that as well. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. But again, we're going to have to wrap up. We're kind of hitting our time limit.
Yeah.
But if I was going to parachute into somebody's RIA and fix it, what I didn't say before is I would start with their existing list, right? So I would start with the customer list and I start with the prospect list. both of those are always under maximized, right? So
Correct.
we could have webinars, we could have Zoom meetings, we have client appreciation days. We could put multi-step direct mail to the prospect list. We could put somebody on doing outbound telemarketing. All kinds of things we could do. But then I would look for big organizations where I can get in front of a large group of people and go speak to 500 people to generate 125 leads, to generate 20 or 30 new clients, all in one fell swoop, long before I would, start cold contacting on LinkedIn, cold calling, and doing all that other crap.
Yeah, exactly. Anywhere you can get a warm engagement first, that's definitely the place to start. Don't start cold.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Mint, anything else to add up, or add add to this before we wrap up?
No, I think that would be my parting thought is, take a look at what you've got that's warm and start there. And if you don't understand what's warm and what's cold in your list, then feel free to give us a call, and we'd love to have a conversation and see if we couldn't help you out with that.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, on that note, we'll call it a day. Oh, you said give us a call. What's the phone number?
Phone number is going to be 303-808-8719.
That's right. Or and you can certainly go to Advisor Wealth Mastery. You have a bunch of free stuff there, and I hope that if you're listening on the podcast, that has been valuable for you. If you're watching the YouTube video, the social media, wherever the hell it ended up popping in front of you, that is valuable, and we'd love to give you a lot of other free support. On that note, we'll call it a day, and thank you, Mindy, for your time.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.